Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing stories of personal transformation and collective healing from people who have been touched by cancer. My name is Lisa, and I'll be guiding today's conversation. If you're listening on an iPhone, click the plus sign in the upper right corner to follow our show and get notified when a new episode is released. My guest today is Megan Claire Chase, a.k.a. Warrior Megsie. Megan Claire is a breast cancer survivor and advocate from Atlanta. Her blog, Life on the Cancer Train, details her experience as a young adult cancer survivor while advocating for better treatment and resources. It is known for being authentic, raw, and informative with a twist of humor. Megan Claire is a powerful public speaker, researcher, and published writer. Her work has been featured in various magazines, including Cure Magazine, Elephants in Tea, Cancer Today, and WebMD. She is a passionate advocate who uses her life on the cancer train to support and advocate for patients and survivors diagnosed with cancer. Hi, Megan Claire. Welcome to Cancer Talks.
Hello, Lisa. I'm so excited to be with you.
I'm very excited too. We've been kind of back and forth online, seeing each other, following each other on Instagram and talking on Instagram and on the phone as well. But it's really nice to see you and to have you in the space tonight.
Yeah, one day we will meet in person. I know it. It's gonna happen.
I know. Yes, we will. We will. I know I was in Atlanta recently and I tried getting connected, but the stars didn't align, but it's coming. It's coming. So I think my interest peaks and my curiosity peaks, just wanting to know who you were before your cancer diagnosis. You're quirky, you're fun, you have this great voice, and I keep telling you, you're going places. You're going to be a star, and you're already a star. But I just want to get to know you. Like, where were you born? Work. What were you doing before this diagnosis?
You're like, where do you come from?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I was actually born in Davenport, Iowa. And it always shocks people. Literally every year on my birthday, I found this T-shirt a couple of years ago that says "Made in Iowa," and I wear it out, and people will actually come up to me and be like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "I was literally made in Iowa."
Wow.
Yeah, my father's side of the family is from Davenport. My mother grew up in Connecticut, and they met in Minnesota. And they did about 3 rounds of IVF. And so that's how I was created in Iowa. But I grew up after they divorced in Macon, Georgia.
Wow. I always thought you were a Georgia peach because I saw stuff on you on the internet with you talking about being in Macon. And so interesting. So you were an IVF. That's a whole other, we need a second episode to talk more about that. So you were born in Iowa. Your family migrated to Macon. And 15, 16, 17, 18, what was it like for you growing up in Macon, Georgia?
So Macon is like a medium-sized town. I'm not going to call it super small. Atlanta was like the place to come. That's about an hour and a half away, depending on how fast you drive. So, growing up in Macon, I will say this. I'm glad I grew up there sometimes. And that is because it takes a village to to raise a child. And then, having a mother who's divorced, I'm an only child, and her working, people really rallied around to make sure that I was always taken care of. And I was very involved in high school. Of course, high school was tough. What am I, 7th generation Catholic? I no longer practice. I left it, but I will say the education, it really was great. But also the trauma that went with that later. But I went to St. Joseph's Catholic School from kindergarten through 8th grade, and then Mount DeSales Academy from 9th through 12th. And my claim to fame, talking like the teen years, is I'm a former cherry blossom princess in Macon, Georgia. That's right. I'm the original Princess Megan.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, and did you, a part of your village, was it like aunties and uncles, or was it more of like neighbors? Because, neighbors and being in this small southern town, was it more neighbors, or was it also like your aunts and uncles and cousins?
So a lot of them, my mother's, brothers and sisters, I was only close really to two of them. My mother's the oldest of six. And yeah, my grandparents definitely got busy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but they were like her sister, one of my aunts, she was there for a little bit because she has two children and we're like stair steps in ages. Kim is a year older than me, and then Rocky, and then Will. And I grew up with the two, but then, they kind of parted ways. But I had a godmother, well, local godmother, because my original godmother is in Iowa, but I had a godmother. I was very involved in the youth group. So my youth group leaders, and they had two sons. I loved my youth group leaders. In fact, I called Dave dad. His name is Dave, because he was just a real great father figure for me. And I also had a god brother. And it's funny, his name was Edward, and so was my favorite uncle. Their uncle's name was Edward. And they were like my big brothers. And then my mother's youngest sister, she's only 8 years older than me. So she was like the surprise
Oh,
baby to
yes,
my
yes.
grandparents. So it's weird. Yeah, it's weird seeing pictures of us as I'm like, two, and there she is,
She's,
little
yes,
girl. Yeah, so we were close, and then of course, again, I was very active in theater, community theater. I took ballet. I played the violin. So I mean, then key club. I mean, I was all
yes.
over the place. So just a lot of great friends and family we made.
Right. Sounds like really great, well-rounded experiences. I could just see you jumping, like, maybe ballet, and then you have to play the violin after school. Your mom is jumping back and forth, and who's picking up and dropping off. So I can definitely see that. I can
Yeah,
definitely see that. Yeah. So fast forward to, how old were you when you got diagnosed?
I was 39, 2 months after my 39th birthday.
And say like 3 years before that, did you finish college? Like even 4 to 5 years prior, did you already finish college? Were you working not only professionally but personally? Were you dating? You were a princess. Who was the guy? Who was the girl? Who was
Oh,
the
you're okay,
nowadays
Lisa.
it could be
What all the
anybody.
deeds?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I did. I went to college actually in Albany, New York, the College of St. Rose, and our claim to fame there is Jimmy Fallon went there.
Oh.
Yes, that's our claim to fame because his picture is on the wall in the big communications building that was never there when I was there, but whatevs.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and I still talk to quite a few people from the college days. I really loved my college experience. I was the first Black cheerleader for basketball. I did that 1 year. I never been a cheerleader, but I was a dancer, and I was like, why not just try out? Like,
Wow.
whatever. And then when I graduated college, I have a BA in communications and a minor in theater. I then moved to Los Angeles.
Wow. Just to kind
Yeah,
of get out of the small town, just to see where, the road would lead you. And I guess for opportunities as well, theater,
yeah.
communications.
Yeah, I wanted to spread my wings. Unfortunately, I had a family that was like, "Go do you. We're here to support you." Um, but so when I moved out to LA, I mean, man, that was a time. Like there were some good times, some bad
Yes.
times. And growing up, a little bit more. And once I hit 25 is when I was like, man, this is a really soulless place. But my college bestie had moved to San Diego because we went to college. She was a year ahead of me, but I moved to LA first, and then she came out, but she was in San Diego. And I was initially going to move to San Diego. But then when I came home, it was the Thanksgiving of 2002. And my mother now has a rare blood cancer. She's an ovarian cancer survivor. And I knew she would never ask me, to come back, but too much was happening and being a whole coast away. I was like, I only have one mother.
That's
So I
right.
moved back.
That's right.
But I moved to Atlanta because I said, no, we're not going back to Macon.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I got a taste of the big city life, so I need to be in the city.
No, that's exciting. And I'm sure that she was quite happy to have you back, kind of like the golden child, like you're back, you're back home.
Yeah, well, she was still like a good 4 to 6 hours away from me for a long time. And then I was working in radio. And before I got diagnosed, I was working actually at iHeart on the
Oh,
radio side.
iHeartRadio. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the pay sucked. The insurance sucked. In fact, and I was also working like another part-time job at Brighton, at Phipps Plaza Mall. That's one of our fancier malls here in Atlanta. And just doing my thing. I was dating, went through a couple of maybe relationships that just did not work out.
Yeah, it's hard.
Uh,
It's hard out there.
it's so hard.
It's,
And
I was gonna say it's been hard, and I guess it's still hard. I'm out of the game, but I'm sure it's hard
you
out there.
found yours, okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But for me, it's like I've always kind of straddled between both like the Black community and the white community, like kind of straddled between worlds because I don't really fit in, or at least back then, because I've done a lot of internal work, because a lot of times when I would date, and if it was a Black guy, it's always, you talk so white, or you dress white, or you do this. And I'm just like, I talk like my mother and my grandparents, like, so having to
Right.
get over that, but then being reminded that I was Black, by certain people in the white community, especially when I got involved in theater and dance, because I'm often the only one in the room or on the stage. And there's a lot of
Absolutely.
pressure that comes with that. And I started gaining a lot of weight. And I was never an overweight person growing up, like ever. And that was one of the first signs that something was wrong.
Right, right. And thank you so much for being open and honest. And I know that I could get that from you as far as the struggles with just not feeling connected within your race, or as you said, feeling like you're not, I'm Black, I'm white, not feeling accepted. And I'm thinking about it now as even with the dating scene, right? Did you date like Black and white guys?
Well, I dated well, here's the thing, and this will sound so terrible. So, and it's because of bullying back in the high school days, right? I did not date Black guys, because of all that bullying, because high school, y'all, was hard. I'm so glad there was none of the social media and stuff when I was in high school, because
Girl,
it would have
so am
been,
I.
right?
We wouldn't be able to live any of the stuff down that happened back in those days. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And so because of that, and because of my, parents being divorced when I was young, and just,
Mhm.
I think my views of Black men were skewed a little bit. But then when I moved back to the South, I was like, okay, it's not as diverse as it was, when I was in upstate, and then when I was in California. And it's not like, oh, you're just choosing us because we're second choice. No, but it's like, as I started again to just do some more internal work and healing, I was like, you know what? Let me give it a try because I've never done it. And then it turned out, yep, that's why I said I wouldn't do it, because I consistently would get, wow, I felt like an alien.
Right,
Um,
right, right,
so that was hard.
right. And I'm sure, like down, in the South, and I think that sometimes, um, people's their ideas of what a Black woman should look like, especially in the South too, what she should look like, what she should sound like,
What you should dress
what she
like.
should dress like. Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure that's podcast number 3. So we have other podcasts that are coming up to
The
talk about
series.
that. The series. That's right. That's right. That's right. So here you are. Were you in a relationship when you got diagnosed, or at that time you were kind of just doing your thing, working and just living?
Well, so I was almost at the 3-year mark from a breakup, and I was taking that 3-year time to like do some internal work, right? And I was just ready to be like, I was like, I don't know what's going on with this weight, but darn it, I'm ready to like date again, or just go out, just be out and about. Then things just really started to happen, with weird symptoms and things. I just wasn't feeling right. And I was like, I don't know what is going on. And that just really put a pause. And then when I eventually got the diagnosis, I was like, well, shoot, now I definitely don't have the emotional capacity and the
Capacity.
energy to handle, rejection and all of that.
Yeah, that
So
came
I
with that.
basically, turned into a nun.
Oh goodness. I'm sure, yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, the diagnosis where, I'm sure that it's like right there in your mind, right? Every time, and I hope it's not too triggering for you. But tell me, like you mentioned some symptoms. Start with the symptoms first. What were you experiencing?
Yeah, my symptoms were different because it really hit me that the guidelines that we have for breast cancer and the symptoms that are listed for breast cancer are based off of white women. And so my symptoms were dismissed for like a little over 2 years, like almost 2.5 years, but I knew something was wrong. So the first two huge ones were the weight gain, right? Because again, I was fit. I mean, I was a trained dancer, cheerleader. And I used to like salsa and swing dance like every weekend. Like I was fit.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I can dance though. I really can.
Wow. Ooh.
Lots of styles. But anyhow,
Yes.
um,
Uh-huh.
and then my hair, which used to be very thick and to my shoulders, and my stylist by this time had been doing my hair for about 13 years. And she's like, are you missing a nutrient? She's like, because your hair, like the texture is getting like so dry and it's like changing. And I was like, yeah, I said, I thought it was feeling weird. And so just with her saying that, I was really like, I've always been aware of what's quote unquote normal for my body. Um, because my maternal grandmother was a registered nurse and she taught our whole family, you need to know what is normal for your body and that it's your patient right to speak up, to be pushy, to change doctors, like ask questions, like all the things, right? So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna monitor this. And then I got these tiny green bruises on my lower left leg. And so I'm trying to like make sense out of this. I'm like, okay, I'm right-handed, I'm right dominant. So what's going on my left leg? And I'm like, oh my God, it's gotta be leukemia. Right. So
Right.
I go and get blood test. It's not leukemia. They're like, you're anemic, but not enough for that. Now, by this point, I'd already had a mammogram. I was able to get one at 35 because, yeah, because there's that link between breast and ovarian. And with my mother,
Got it.
yeah,
Having been diagnosed.
right.
Yes.
She was diagnosed with ovarian when she was 28 and pregnant with me. And so that's where we always thought my cancer would be, like that it would be ovarian and cervical. That's where all my issues were. And so 35, they never told me. It was written on my results about dense breasts. Like no one ever mentioned that. But they were like, hey, you're clear. Come back when you're 40. I'm like, all right. Okay. See you then. And then again, my nails started to get brittle and like chipping and falling off. And I was just so fatigued. And I just kept going to like the endocrinologist and I go to my primary. I mean, I'm just going to all these specialists. And they're basically telling me, you know what? You just need to lose weight, eat better, exercise, and sleep, get more sleep. And I'm just like,
Mm.
okay, so why am I getting bruises? Why is my hair falling out? And then, like, I'm still so angry about this one part here. I went to a dermatologist because I saw what it looked like a zit on the outside of my left breast. And what I've discovered now is like in all of these specialties that it's really hard to find doctors of color
Of
when there are
course.
certain specialties. And so and plus insurance, right? And so she was not of color. And she's like, yeah, that's a zit. Here's some cream. Just put it on. It should go away in a few days. And it did go away. Like it didn't hurt or anything. But I just remember thinking, that's a really odd place for a zit.
On the breast, like around your
On the
nipple, or like on the
outside. Yeah, on
side
the
of the,
outside of
yes.
my breast.
Interesting. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is weird. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But then it went away. So I was, I just kind of filed it in the back of my mind. But then I know you're like, good grief. I got a circular bruise. I'm so mad I never thought to take a picture of it at the time. And on the back of my left arm. So everything is happening on the left. Like my hair fell out on the left side. We had to cut it
Wow.
super short. I had never had short hair in my life.
Wow. Wow.
And by this point, my primary goes, and again, this is over like almost a 2.5 year period. She's like, I don't know what your body's trying to tell us, but if it's still here in 2 weeks, she goes, I'm going to have to consult with some colleagues. I'm like, all right. So because of the weight gain, right? I never had big boobs before. So I was always feeling these suckers. I was like, oh, what? I got a real chest. Um, so the story goes again, I was a really big fan of Supergirl. Okay. Like that first season was just it. So good. And I think it might have been maybe the season finale or something, because I was just like super stoked about that particular episode. So I like go and take a shower. It's like, I'm going to take a shower because I've been a long day. I'm going to get my favorite jammies and, like I'm going to be ready for this. And when I was in the shower, that's when I felt it. And it was, like right here on the side. And I didn't think breast. And the sucker was huge. I mean, it was like,
Wow.
it felt like this, like the size of a fist and as hard as a fist. And it was not there that morning.
Wow. 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 So in addition to your breast, like the physical breast, you're also feeling like another fist-like
Yeah,
thing there, ball
like,
there,
and it was huge. I was like, what? And it
Wow.
didn't hurt. Like, that's the thing. So the next day I call and I talked with the scheduler. She's like, oh, you're already scheduled, in 2 weeks. And I could just hear my Nana. She had passed away at this point, but I could just hear her saying, get pushy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
get pushy. And so I was like, I need to speak to the PA or, my PCP's nurse. Like, I got to talk to somebody. And so I did get someone on the phone and they were like, okay, she's with another patient, but I'm going to make sure that she gets this message. I was like, all right. I get a call literally not even 10 minutes later. And she goes, I've written an order for you to have a diagnostic mammogram. And so I hear that word and I'm just like, well, didn't I already have one of those? Not realizing, no, what you had at 35 was a preventative one. This is a diagnostic one. So again, because I come from a cancerous family, like I already knew it was a mass. Like I was not surprised when they came back and said, you know what, we're going to need to do a biopsy. And I'm like, well, I could have told you that because this sucker's too huge.
Was your
And
mom or anyone there with you
oh,
during
yeah.
all of this? Is your mom, because that's what I envision in my mind. I'm sure she's like right there sitting with
Yep.
you. Just, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I brought her. So the biopsy, and of course, I remember the date and everything very clearly because I had the biopsy on a Friday and it was 9/11/2015. And that just happened to be a Friday. And I purposely wanted to have the biopsy as late in the afternoon as possible because, it's really stressful having to leave work to go to things, get tests and then go back to work. And I just wanted to
Absolutely.
get her done. I say that all the time, get her done and then go home.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm an empath, so I can sense when energy shifts in the room. And the doctor now, I don't know if do you watch Grey's Anatomy?
I
Grey's
have.
Anatomy?
I have.
Okay. Well, so Dr. Gray, right? Her name, the doctor, her name is Dr. Gray. And I just laughed. And she was like, yeah, I should have kept my maiden name.
Oh my goodness.
So Dr. Gray told me, she was like, hey, with your biopsy, I'm going to take probably like 8 to 10 tissue samples. I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. But I was counting and she took like almost 20. That's when I could just sense the energy shift because she kept her face totally neutral. And I'm squeezing the nurse's hand. She's like, are you feeling pain? You feel like a pressure, like they numb you, like they put a needle in there to numb you.
Mm-hmm.
That hurt, but I was just holding her because that sound, and to this day, when I hear a staple
Right.
gun, I jump. It totally triggers me back to that. But when I was counting, and I was like, "Oh, that's not good." And I said, "Well, when will I get the results?" And again, this is like because my appointment was at 4:30, so by this point, it's almost 6 o'clock. She was like, "You know what? Not until probably Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest." So I go into work on Monday, putting it out of my head, doing the job. And I remember I was in my cubicle and I remember the time. And that is because when I used to work on the traffic side, and traffic means copy, and in the media world, not a traffic light.
Because that's what I was
And
thinking, like, oh, copy what? Like,
yeah, so all the commercials you hear on the radio or
right.
TV, yeah, that's traffic. And
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm listening to this spot and I'm like, man, I got to send this back to the client. It's too long. I can't send it to the station this way. And I'd looked, because I was timing it and my phone rang at exactly 3:05 p.m. on that Monday. And I was like, who's that? I was like, I don't know this number. But it was like my gut was saying, go answer the phone. And I feel like that gut to me was God saying, answer the phone, because I'm a very dramatic person.
No.
I
No.
mean, I'm just a little, okay,
Just a
maybe
tiny
not.
bit.
Okay, yeah, I am dramatic. That's the truth. Therefore, I'm like running down the hall, being all kind of extra. Everyone's like, what is she doing? Because one of my nicknames, and it was a nickname that was given to me by some guy friends back in the college days, MC, because I get mad when people chop off my name and just call me Megan. I'm like, it's Megan Claire. So I always thought that was cute. And then actually working in radio and TV, I was like, oh, that's so cute. So they're like, MC, are you all right? I'm like, yeah. So I'm in an empty conference room and she goes, okay. She was like, you have invasive lobular breast cancer, and we don't know the stage yet. And I just
Wow.
sat there and I was like, wait, what? Wait, and what? And then I started like my voice and I started to get hysterical. And she just like snapped me back and said, hey, I need you to get a pen and paper because I've got information for you that you need to take down right now. And the fact that she said it like that, I was like, okay. So I go running back again. They're like, are you all right? It's like, yeah. Go running back because I didn't think to bring something with me.
Right.
And she goes, okay, I've talked to your primary. Here are the two oncologists we recommend. Here is the plastic surgeon we recommend. Here's the breast cancer. There are two options for the breast cancer surgeon we recommend. And later, a few years later, I realized how privileged I was in that moment because I didn't have to find all these people myself. They had already checked with my insurance, had laid it out saying, these are the people. And I remember also thinking, why do I need a plastic surgeon? Like nothing was processing.
And it's, and pause right there for a minute. I think even as a social worker and being in the field, I'm thinking like that was really great of that doctor to find out all of this stuff. Like she did her homework, got everything together for you to set everything up. And then on the other hand, I'm sitting here saying, oh my gosh, like getting that phone call at work, hearing all of that, as you said, plastic surgeon, this, then you're just like, it's so much information. It's a good thing, but it's also like, it's so much, you know?
Yeah.
Any tears, any tears while you're at work, trying
Oh
to
my
hold it
God.
together?
Yes. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
as soon as she told me all that, I just started crying. I was like, I gotta call my mother. So I call my mother
Mm-hmm.
and my mother, I mean, she's a pistol. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's only like 5'1". She tries to say
Uh-huh.
she's 5'3". I was like, no, mother, you're 5'1". So I've been taller than her since I was 10.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's very, what's the word I want to say? Very direct. So when I told her, she doesn't like freak out like I do. Like I do, I'm all the tears, the drama, and she's all like, okay, let's take a step back. And so
Mm.
she was actually in shock because she like paused for a minute and she goes, okay, here's what I need you to do. Because I was just like, I don't know. She was like, take a deep breath. I want you to call, get these appointments, and then you call me back. So it's like I was doing that. So I had like something to do and I was just getting appointments. And it was at that moment when I'm making these appointments is that I'm starting to hear the term young adult. And I'm still like, why am I a young adult? I'm in my 30s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Funny. So I get all of those done. And then I had to, mother's like, okay, I'm coming over. Like, I'll be there in a minute. I was like, okay. So I go walking back to my cubicle. I did not want anyone else to know that I'd just been diagnosed with breast cancer. But unfortunately, it was written all over my face that something major was wrong. And I ended up telling my boss, like right then and there.
was there like, it sounds like you're disappointed. Like, it seems like you're just like, I should have never told her. And I know for me too, as a Black woman in healthcare and working, like, I'm like, I don't want these people in my business. But but then on the other end, I'm listening like, this is a lot. Like, how could you have a straight face and like, yep, all right, MC's back. See you guys later. I'm running out now. Like, what,
Right.
how do you, yeah.
So, I mean, I burst into tears. And the thing is,
Of
it's like I
course.
wanted to hold on to that news and just get more information because, of course,
It's
people
a
are going to be like, oh,
process
right.
to
Like,
process this.
right. The
Yeah.
next person I wanted to like see and talk to was my mother, not my
Mm-hmm.
boss, who was
Mm-hmm.
male. I mean, he was lovely and ultimately everyone was very lovely about it. But to this day, and after talking with some other cancer survivors, breast cancer survivors, all types of cancer survivors, I don't like getting a cancer call. Like, at least if you say you need to come to the office, like, you're going to hear some news that's going to be hard, but at least you can, like, you bring somebody with you. Because I actually, when I realized after I burst into tears with my boss, I couldn't drive myself home. Like, I was so like
Right.
worked up
Right. Right.
that a coworker drove me home.
Now, is there some of this, as we're talking, I think about, is it more just feeling upset about the vulnerability that you had to rely on other people, or, or
No,
what was it?
no, for me, it wasn't that. Like, I worked with some good people. I will say that. It was just that was such a big moment and I didn't want to be asked questions that I didn't even know the answers to. So I really wish I could have, had my mother there with me as I'm hearing this news because she can process better what is happening because I felt like a deer in headlights. Like I
Absolutely.
literally could not get myself home.
No, and you were. And on one hand, I'm thinking like, okay, did the doctor, she did all of that, getting all these resources in store for you and putting everything together and wanting, I could tell the emergency, right? That it was that
Right.
you needed to respond very quickly to this. But then a part of it too, it's like, would it have mattered if you went into the office and were you able to, would you have been more nervous bringing your mother, bringing someone there with you as opposed to, I think it was more just being by yourself out there and like,
And plus, it was on a Monday. Like they told me I would be getting the results on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I was not prepared and that too, the fact that I got it so quickly, like that let me know, whoa, okay, this is serious. And so ultimately, when I met my oncologist, so the talk about a weird bonding moment with my mother. Like, this is not the kind of mother-daughter date that we ever wanted. So we go, and I end up, the first appointment I was able to get was at the other location. So I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have some suburbs and then the city. And so the first available, the oncologist was in the Alpharetta office on that day. But then ultimately I was treated in Atlanta. And so we go, well, that's the same cancer center that my mother goes to. So the front desk person recognizes my mother, like, Dr. Chase, today's not your day to come in for chemo. Like, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, it's me. I'm here to see the oncologist. And just the look on that woman's face. And then I felt I needed to like calm her down, like I need to comfort her. I was like, oh, I said, it's a weird mother-daughter, date bonding here. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. That must, yeah, weird and difficult. And as you said, you're having to, like, in a sense, to calm her down and to make her feel comfortable with your uncomfortableness and your
Right,
trauma, right? Like, it's
right.
like, and having to to even joke about it too, like to be like, no, we're just bonding. We both have cancer. Like, but I know
Yeah,
that that's probably some way that I'd probably make light of it too, because it's like, you can't make the stuff up. Like,
right.
how do like what? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very weird. And then meeting with the oncologist. And again, I'm so glad my mother was there. And I always advocate, like, you got to bring someone with you.
Absolutely.
But I also recognize too that some people say, well, I'm not educated in medical terminology. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to like be asking, if I go with them. And I felt really fortunate that I have my mother who has 2 PhDs, okay?
Mhm,
And then
mhm, that's
also,
right.
right, like, woman is
Yeah.
brilliant, but also,
Yes.
going through cancer herself, she understands a lot of the terminology. And when the when my oncologist goes, okay, next you're going to meet with the breast cancer surgeon. And all of this is happening in the same week that I've been diagnosed.
Wow.
Like I was diagnosed on a Monday, and then it was like, what was it? Like Wednesday through Friday. I think I get them mixed up. I do believe it was the oncologist first, then the breast surgeon, and then the plastic surgeon. But all of this is in the same week. Like I
Right,
still haven't even
right,
processed why I need to see a plastic surgeon.
right, right. And what was the diagnosis?
So ultimately, stage 2A invasive lobular breast cancer, HR positive, HER2 negative. And that HER2 negative part was very important. So that was good. But the lobular part was not as good, because back in September 2015, and actually up until pretty recently, oncologists have just been treating lobular like ductal, but the histologies are totally different. And also, they missed this mass on my mammogram that I got at
Right,
35,
right,
because
right.
lobular is known as the sneaky cancer because it can mask and look like healthy tissue. So it often doesn't show up on a mammogram. And so,
Oh, so if it's
yeah.
healthy, I know, and I also have dense breasts as well.
Mhm.
So you're saying that it looks like a part of the healthy, dense tissues, and then,
Yes.
yeah,
So
right,
it can be
right.
easily missed. And so because of the size of it, it didn't get in my lymph nodes. So that
Thank
was good.
God.
No node involvement. But they were like, okay, it's probably been growing in you from 8 to 10 years. And I was like, seriously?
Wow.
And so when I was ultimately told that I needed 16 rounds of chemo, they first wanted to contain it so it wouldn't get in my lymph nodes, and then shrink it as much as possible. So it was like a two mission type of deal: contain it and then shrink it as much as possible before we do any type of surgery. But my oncologist, when I found that part out, because I got genetic testing and all of that. So that's
Right,
what my breast cancer
right.
surgeon had ordered for me. And then they talked, and then my oncologist ultimately is the one that told me how much chemo I would need. But she says all of this, gonna need 16 rounds of chemo, and do you want to freeze your eggs? Like
All in the same,
all
yeah.
in the same breath. All I heard was chemo. And because I was single, no human children at that time, I wasn't all I was focused on was like, oh my God, because I was hearing, hey, now you need to get the port surgery, and now you need this, and we want to start chemo. Like it was so quick, like everything was happening so
So
fast.
quick, right.
Like it was a
To
matter
the
of weeks.
Absolutely. And having to make that decision, did you give it much thought, or was it just something like, I can't even think about kids right now. I just need to save my life. Like, was it like that? Or were you just like, Mom, like, should I? I don't know. What are the costs of this? Should I? What does that even look like? Or was it like, I'm in survival?
Yeah, it was literally fight or flight mode. I was like, okay, the fact that they were just going so quickly, I wish now I had asked, like, is there a reason why we're going so quickly? Like, is there time? So I wasn't thinking about children or anything. I was like, okay, we gotta get this shrunk so
Done
we
to
can get it
start
out.
this. Yes, yes.
I mean, because of course they do tell you all of this, and I'm just signing stuff because I'm just like, oh my God. And I get really upset because what I wish had happened is, okay, I hear all of that. I wish the nurse or social worker or somebody could have called me the next day when I'm not in the oncology office hearing all of this terminology and stuff for the first time, and say, hey, that was a lot of information you heard yesterday. Let me go over it again to make sure you understand. Do you want a consultation now? Yeah, and kind of walk me through, just so I would
Absolutely.
know about the option. I more than likely wouldn't have been able to do it because I can't afford it, but just to
That you'd have
have,
had to have a choice that you,
yeah,
yeah.
it was a lot. So I ultimately had 16 rounds of chemo. I had like the mother load of side effects. Even my palms, they turned black. It was like I was burned. Like my palms and the balls of my feet, like it was just insane. And I just want to give a shout out to like oncology pharmacists. I feel like they get left out of the conversations. Mine, her name was Candace. I'll never forget it. She was amazing. She really helped with the mouth sores. And to this day, I
Right.
tell others, y'all, the magic mouthwash, we don't even know what it's actually called, but that's how it's known in the cancer world.
Yes, yes, yes.
But it's like, and Gel Claire, like, she just happened to ask me, she was like, how are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm fine. She goes, no, how are you really doing? Like, she really wanted to know. And I just like burst into tears. I must have been looking really bad. And I told her about the mouth sores. I was like, everything hurts. I can't eat. And she goes, you know what? I have an idea. Are you okay to wait 10 minutes? I was like, yeah. She ends up calling a specialty pharmacy, I think in like New Jersey.
Wow.
It was either in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, like somewhere. And she got 8 boxes of them shipped to me for free to my home.
Wow. That was really awesome. I know that our patients sometimes have correspondences, or they'll bring, we have a small cancer institute and they bring over the stuff sometimes to the nurses, and you can kind of see patients in passing. But that really says a lot about her as well, to stop and to check in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to send you eight boxes.
I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
it
it's just
worked
those
like a
little
charm.
things. Yeah, yeah. We hear great things about magic mouthwash. Yeah. And so you mentioned the pharmacist. Who else played like this role in getting you through this chemotherapy, and in helping you to propel you into survivorship? Who else played that role?
So I read every single sheet of paper, material, resource that I was given. And it just happened to be on a sheet of paper, all text, no less, right? But I read absolutely everything I received, and it said, social worker assigned to my oncologist. And I was like, what's a social worker doing in cancer? Like, I'm thinking DFACS.
Let me tell we
I
do
was
more
like,
than help children. No,
yeah, like I just found that weird. And because I didn't understand what that meant, I was like, well, I'm going to call and get some information. And when I called, her name is Catherine with a K. And I spoke with her, and I was like, she goes, look, she said, I see you have an appointment like tomorrow. She was like, I will let them know to make sure that they schedule time so you can meet with me. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't know what you do, but sure, I'll talk to you. She was instrumental in
wow.
getting me through active treatment. So I was supposed to start chemo on October 2nd, 2015. So I had the port surgery on September 28th. She was like, hey, there's a class called Chemoflage. She goes, you just happen to fall so you'll be able to take this class right before you start chemo. And I was like, what the heck is Chemoflage? I was like, right? Thank
Yeah.
gosh, like she told me this. And so it actually happened at Nordstrom. So it's like this like super older lady who had breast cancer. And she like came up with a chemoflage class that was taught in one of the meeting rooms at Nordstrom. And so
Oh,
there's
okay.
actually a story with Nordstrom, like the owner of Nordstrom who came up with the whole like store. His mom had breast cancer back in the day, and she, before the plastic surgery was covered like it is now, she had just
The port, or
yeah, like she just had the one breast,
mm-hmm.
and she never felt beautiful in any lingerie or any clothes or anything like that. Nothing fit right. And so a lot of people don't know that about like Nordstrom, because they don't make that. And I love that, because they could be making like a ton of money for it. But that class is where I met my chemo twin. And she and we're like the same height. We had on the same pair of shoes. Like, I mean, it was so insane.
Wow.
We were the same age, but she was 3 months ahead of me. And she was also like, I met her mom there, her mother met my mother there. Like we became like, we called each other twin because we had so much in common. But when I saw her take her scarf off, it was that moment where everything became real for me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really going to lose my hair. And we would check in on each other, and between her, my mother, of course, the social worker who also got me grants to help pay for my chemo because I did not have the greatest
Absolutely.
insurance. And like she, constantly like checking in with me and making sure that the onus wasn't all on me to find all this information.
Absolutely. No, that's really awesome. And you know what? I want to quickly just touch on how was it at work? Did you stop working? Were you able to take some leave off? Because I know that's something, especially being an AYA, cancer patient. What was that like? If you can just briefly tell me a little bit more about that.
So because of when I got diagnosed, it was like right in the midst of, what do you call it? Like when you have to
The open enrollment?
open enrollment. There we go. I was like, what's that called? Open
Yes,
enrollment, right? Well, because I had not selected, it was a technicality, because I had not selected short-term disability in the past. Well, that's because I couldn't afford it. It took too much out of my paycheck.
it sure
Um,
does.
I didn't I didn't have it. So I was like, how am I supposed to like work while going through chemo? Like, how am I supposed to pay for all this? I mean, I was just very freaked out because I'm single. Like, this was just a lot. And so I will say this, like, I will always, always hold my department and other offices throughout the country of iHeart. The way people came together, they did a GoFundMe. They
Yeah,
like donated their PTO. So when it was time for surgeries, I could take off. Like it was, they really, I was very touched by
no,
that. And I also had
absolutely.
to let go of my pride and ask for help. And I did like another GoFundMe because I was like, this is bigger. This is bigger than me. And
Absolutely.
I needed the help. So it was hard, but I still wasn't able to take the time that I needed to really focus on chemo and rest. So my body has been angry with me ever since.
And I'm sure there are many, even though you're in survivorship right now, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that it's a journey. You mentioned that you're having some scans, I think you said
Yep.
in a few days. What has been kind of like a challenge, being here in survivorship? You mentioned your body. Like, what are some of the other things that you find challenging being in the survivorship space?
It's the side effects. I call it the collateral damage done from the toxic treatments. I've had multiple surgeries, losing my fertility, radiation, the radiation burn. Like you can even kind of see like this darkness on my skin. Like I got like a secondary burn, like I mean, secondary rash later, like 2 years later. I mean, all of these things, it's like I don't know this body anymore, and I don't know how it's going to act or react,
Mhm.
and that's frustrating. I really suffer from severe chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy in my hands and feet. Medications weren't helping. I did find a solution for that, but that wasn't fully covered by insurance. So I paid a lot out of pocket. The chiropractor, believe it or not, it was a chiropractor who, and the reason I went to him is because he specialized, like I could see, he differentiated between the chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy and diabetic neuropathy, which I am not diabetic.
Right, right,
And
right.
so it's been a real challenge to do that. I ultimately left my career because I'd actually gotten like my dream job at a huge ad agency in the midst of all of this. Like once I entered the survivorship stage, but then having additional complications and more surgeries, my body just was like, you're not letting me rest. So I'm going to shut you down. And that's essentially what happened. So it's been a lot for me professionally. I've worked really hard to get my memory better than it was because chemo brain or brain fog is
It's
real,
real. It's real. Yeah, it's
so
real.
real. But I've done a lot to like get it better to now I don't have to write every little thing down. And I mean, like every little thing down. I don't have to do that anymore.
No,
So
absolutely,
yeah, that's the
absolutely.
challenge. And plus still being single and being fatigued and I'm in pain 24/7. And people are like, how do you work? And I'm like, well, I have no choice. People can't live on disability. Like, and
No,
I can, especially in the AYA community, it's so hard because they're like, I want to have a life. I want to be able to do things.
absolutely. And feel purposeful. And you had such a drive and a passion and went to school and did all of these things to get to where you are and were before all of this was somehow taken away, right?
Yeah.
I know that we could talk all day, but I wanted to just quickly touch on the mental health piece. You're someone who talks a lot about your cutie therapist. How does, your therapist just briefly tell me, like, how has therapy helped you? We talked about neuropathy and all the physical symptoms. How does therapy help?
I'm a big proponent of therapy, and I was in therapy like pre-cancer for other stuff. And what I always like to tell people is you got to audition your therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they got to
Yeah.
win the coveted role.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I also realized, hey, I need someone who specializes in AYA, right? I need someone who specializes in chronic pain. But this took years. This took about like 3 years to even like realize that's what I needed, how it was different now. And so I happened to find this amazing therapist because I was getting some support at, well, now it's called Cactus Cancer Society. At that time, it's called Lacuna Loft and their journaling program. Jean Rowe, giving you a shout out, Jean.
Yes, I
Um,
know Jean Rowe.
yeah, so
Yeah.
she actually asked me one day because she could just tell I was really upset. She was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I really need someone to talk to." Blah 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 blah. And so she sent out a message to her network and would forward me any responses. And my cutie therapist, he was the first one to respond, and he responded with humor. But then when I met him, I'm like, "What's this young white dude gonna do? Like, what?
Hmm.
What?" I call him cutie therapist because yes, he is adorable, and I'm like, why is he married?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But
he has such great techniques. He talks to me in a way that I will hear it. He understands how the nervous system and the pain and the fatigue play a part in the mental health, in the depression, in the anxiety, in the insomnia.
Mhm.
So he's given me a lot of new tools that I never would have had or known about if he hadn't been. He's actually an oncology social worker too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
That's
think I
awesome.
really lucked out with that. And I know not everyone will be able to get that because he fully understands like what we go through.
No, absolutely. And I'm so happy. And it always tickles me when you write about him or say something about seeing him for, for that day. It always tickles me. And I'm happy that you have that support. As we wind down now, tell me, you talk about your mom and it's such a beautiful legacy. Your mom, your grandmother. I can tell that you're from a strong background of just very dedicated women that have a sense of humor as well. What brings you, other than Nathan, the cat, Edgar, what brings you joy? What makes you laugh and make you feel happy? What brings you joy?
So again, I'm definitely a theater person. So, I've been taking voiceover lessons and I am wanting to get back into dancing, even though it's hard to move and I've gained so much weight. I had a therapy session earlier today with a cutie
Mm,
therapist, and so
that's
I've been given
right.
some directives. And so I dancing makes me happy. Being on stage makes me happy. Making videos makes me happy. Having these kind of conversations and the fact that I have cancer besties, those make me happy. But I am going to try and work on finding more local connection because that's what's missing is I have all these amazing people, but nobody lives close. Or the
Right,
ones that
right.
do live close, they've got super busy lives too. And so I try and find my pockets of joy and I'm trying to figure out how to make it so it's more consistent pockets of joy.
Right. That's awesome. And I hope that you do find like a good peer group, support group as far as, your people in the Atlanta area. Because I'm sure that there are many women, as you know, that are dealing with cancer there. And I think, just finding that connection. So I'm really
Mhm.
hopeful that you'll find that. I know that it's the last day, it's Halloween, it's the last day of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Any advice for women, especially for Black women in general? Any advice as we close out? What would you like to say to women that are listening?
Yeah, this year I'm excited to say that breast cancer awareness, we're turning that into breast cancer action and breast cancer
Mm-hmm.
education. And so, specifically for Black women, like a lot of our symptoms or the side effects we have, they can possibly be different from our white counterparts. So, you're going to have to really advocate for yourself and tell your doctors, like, well, this is really what I'm feeling, and I want you to report these side effects to the FDA. And that is something so many people don't know that you can do.
Wow.
And
Wow.
because I had to fight really hard and advocate really hard because certain medications, I would have these side effects and they would tell me, well, that's not listed on here or that's really rare. So even throughout all of this at your weakest, you still have to, which is so upsetting, right? It's like we never really get a chance to rest, but you still have to
Yeah.
make sure you're pushing to get the answers you deserve.
No, absolutely, absolutely. No, I've learned so much from this conversation. It was really just beautiful just sitting here and chatting with you. And as I said, we can go on for hours and hours, but I really appreciated you taking your time to talk to us on Cancer Talks tonight. And I just look forward to hopefully doing a second piece with you to get some more information about the work that you're doing in the community. But thank you so much, Megan Claire Chase, a.k.a. Megsie, a.k.a. MC, a.k.a.
A million
A
nicknames.
million. Yes, absolutely. No, thank you so much. And I wish you all the best. I'm praying that everything goes well with your scans and tests that you have coming up this week. And it was a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be part of Cancer Talk. And yeah, we definitely need to talk some more, for sure.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who's been touched by cancer. If you have a story to share, write to us at info@cancertalks.com. If you're moved to donate, please visit cancertalks.com/donate.